जो हमारे लिए बड़ी सार्थक रहेंगी, बहुमूल्य भी रहेंगी, और आप लास्ट तक बैठेंगे तो बहुत अच्छा लगेगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Good afternoon, everyone. We have reached to a stage of which we were in queue waiting for long. It is going to be a session of its own kind. We are indeed honored to have Madam Singh, the Judge Honorable High Court of Delhi, Shri N. Venkatraman, and Additional Solicitor General of India. I would request both the distinguished speakers to grace the dais so that we can start the session. Since this is the gathering of a profession, so there are certain things which are very similar for all of us. In the life of professionals, we move from one ladder of life to another. We specialize in different dimensions, different curves. But there is an attribute of professionalism and aptitude, which looks from their peers and mostly from the one who have excelled themselves. This session is unique in a sense that we have two distinguished speakers. Honorable Madam Justice Pratibha Singh. She has been a distinguished practitioner of our court. In fact, the development of intellectual property law over 2 decades has phenomenally witnessed her startling presence. She has mastered almost all nook and cranny of that branch of law. Her magnum opus on patent is still a masterpiece of craftsmanship. When I started my practice, IP law was one of the areas where I wanted to specialize. It has its own fascination of its own kind, but I have indicated that the life of professional grows differently. So profession specializes in its own way. So somehow that gone on to a different seat. Maybe in future we can explore that with that depth. But when I read that book, something extraordinary has gone into my mind, and that I would share in a while, and then I will move on to the topic of a session. It has a direct bearing and direct relevance. Be it a judgment or be it a scholarly work, the sense of accuracy and precision are the hallmark that we all practitioners lacks in our pleadings quite often. The book, the judgment of Her Ladyship, both are exceptions to that. They are a source of inspiration in its own spirit, and in that sense, making an introduction of her would be an embellishment which, because of her moving from one level of brilliance to another. Donning the bench of High Court might have costed professionally, but it has excelled the printed pages of law book. So that's a contribution which my lords have given to all of us. We are indebted to that. Shri N. Venkat Raman, Learned Additional Solicitor General, is another giant in its own sphere on a different side at bar. Perhaps in last 5 years, all the major developments on tax laws and especially the constitutional imprint of tax laws were his contributions. Naming the cases would again, as I said, would be to entrenching into that trajectory which would be never ending. The same set of principles can be viewed differently is an enzymatic throw in which the lawyers often play a craft. The way in which the Vodafone's takeover has been adopted in Tiger Global, here all practitioners of law are there, so I would not dive deep into it, we all know that. I would not take much time because coming in way of the giants would be an anathema in itself, and I do not want to be guilty of that sort, and therefore I would request the lords to start with the presentation of it. PPT I am told, so yes.
Good afternoon to everyone. Learned Additional Solicitor General, Mr. Agrawal, Anurag, friends from the bar. I was just walking in and I was telling everybody I miss the tax practitioners because I'm in a different roster nowadays. So I think that in my own experience, my experience on the tax bench, either in the initial years when I sat with 2 giant judges, Justice Muller and Justice Sanjeev Khanna, you can imagine what I must have gone through. I learned a lot from both of them. That was the time when GST had just started. I became a judge in May of 2017, and July 2017 I was in the tax bench. So, 1st July 17, GST, the bell of GST rang in the Central House of Parliament, and it was wonderful to see my mentor, Mr. Arun Jaitley, there, whom we miss so much. And of course, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee and the present government, the Prime Minister and everybody bringing in tax reforms into India. GST was a big reform, and today as I opened the news, it was wonderful to see the collections for July. It's reached 1.2 lakh crores, isn't it, this month. So GST has done extremely well as a regime. There were several hiccups initially, which we are all aware of. I remember one day when I was sitting with Justice Khanna, the whole courtroom was full of lawyers. And I'm telling you these anecdotes because we tend to forget these anecdotes as we move on in life. I remember very clearly, suddenly Justice Khanna said, what has happened? There was some writ by the All India Tax Bar or something like that. And the portal of GST wasn't working properly. And there was a writ petition in the High Court saying, it's not working properly, what do we do? And then Justice Khanna said, okay, just calm down, we have to, these are new things and it will take time for it to settle down. So let us give it some time to settle down, and you practitioners have to, hold hands of the taxpayers and let us take it slowly. We will ask the government, we will ask the department. I'm told it was run at that time by Infosys. I don't know who's running it now. It's the same company? No, it's something company. Okay. At that time, I remember it was Infosys, and then those officials had come to the court, and then we questioned them as to what is the problem. So that's how, like the government, the taxpayers, the courts have kind of together as a team worked together in this regime, which has now fully entrenched itself. It is more than 9 years, and I guess there will continue to be problems as we move forward. But yes, one nation, one tax is becoming a reality, because there were 4 or 5 slabs earlier. Right now it is 2 slabs, isn't it, broadly? So I'm not sure if I'm right. I think there are broadly 2 slabs now. So the one nation, one tax dream is coming true, I guess. But let us see what were the problems that we face and what is the way forward and what are the challenges that we have. So in my first stint on the bench, this was 17-18, most of the cases that we decided, it was kind of a transitional phase. It was service tax and GST moving into GST. So this is like, for example, the Indian Association of Tour Operators, exemptions, whether it constitutes export of services. Same thing with Verizon, whether it constitutes export of services and whether exemptions should be granted. The same issue arises even in GST today, in the later roster when I sat. And export of services issue when there is data transfer, when there is telecommunication, when there is incoming foreign exchange. The tests have now been laid down very clearly that if there is foreign exchange coming into the country, even if the place where the service is being given could be India, for example, in the tour operators case it was India, where the tour operators were giving service, the exemptions were permitted. Then of course came a case of J.K. Mittal. Where is Mr. Mittal? I don't see him here today. In the morning, okay. So I remember this case where it is reverse charge and forward charge mechanism. And today the lawyers are in a different league. They still get reverse charge mechanism and nobody on earth can shake that. So everyone else is in a forward charge mechanism. So recently there was a matter where we reserved in a division bench where whether an insolvency professional is entitled to a reverse charge mechanism, then an advocate becomes a resolution professional, whether it would be reverse charge or forward charge. Judgment is yet to come. I can't reveal my secrets right now. So that judgment will be coming soon. But yes, insofar as lawyers are concerned, reverse charge mechanism is working, and that matter is still in the Supreme Court. It's like a matter 3-4 connected with petitions. Then of course the NBCC matter, where we really had a lot of challenge on multiple show cause notices being issued by officers of the DGCEI, Directorate General of Central Excise, whether it is permissible or not. That was another major challenge we had to decide at that time in 1718. So that was the kind of cases we were hearing at that time, very fundamental issues, very basic issues of GST. But now, in the 2025-26, in that whole year of 25, I remember I was on the GST roster with different judges as my companion judges. The challenges have really changed in the second roster. One of the biggest challenges which I think, which I had not contemplated in the first regime, in the first stint of the GST bench, was input tax credit. It became such a major issue in the second round when we were sitting, and several cases we found fake firms, non-existent firms being claiming input tax credit. There was actually no sale of goods and services, there would only be invoicing, and it would be in a circuitous method. And believe you me, 122(1)(a) with 122(1)(a) and tax consultants, we've had to take a very strict view on input tax regime, input tax credit claims. The reason was these orders and these show cause notices were showing us that some, input tax credit was a wonderful and a beautiful system and mechanism which was meant to integrate people who are paying tax with people who are recipients of the supplies and then giving them benefits. It was supposed to be such a positive reform in GST, but unfortunately, there were several cases which we saw of misuse of input tax credit. And I mean, I for one believe that this is a reform that should not be allowed to fail, and therefore, any fraudulent claim of ITC, I think as a bench we came down quite heavily. I remember in one case, this SR Enterprises, Bhupinder Kumar, there are any number of cases on input tax credit which we must have decided. In fact, GST consultants were made liable. There was this particular case where the person was working in the GST department, Delhi GST department earlier. He became a GST consultant. He was getting some commission. The question was whether he is himself liable or not. And in those cases, the court has said nothing doing. You go fight your appeals, pay the 10% pre-deposit. Because this is one area where we took very, very stringent view. However, in various other issues, for example, the B. Brown medical case, we remember this was a case where in some of the forms which were filed, incorrectly the Bombay GST number of that particular company was inserted when the Delhi GST number had to be inserted. The department was right in what it did by not giving credit, but then the court exercised its jurisdiction and said no, this is a bona fide mistake by a company, so you cannot deprive a company of the the genuine transaction just due to clerical mismatch. So writ petitions have been entertained where there have been genuine cases, and where there have been fraudulent and those kind of cases, writ petitions have not been entertained. And other cases, the Ambika traders, that was an important case which raised a very important issue under the GST regime, whether there can be consolidated show cause notice multiple financial years. It was an issue which was arising in several cases which were coming before the court, and on that basis there was a challenge that even the show cause notices had to be quashed. So in that case, I remember we took a view that the manner in which input tax credit flows from one year to the other, because the credit may be claimed in 1 year, it is being passed on in the next year. So the transactions are connected to each other, interconnected, and the word period in that particular section was interpreted, and then the court held that consolidated notices is permissible in that. So what is it that has changed over these years? In the 17 to 20 era, GST case law was not there. It was only the service tax regime case laws which were there, and it was being applied to GST. But then, thereafter, the department did something very, a big change came in. So the whole thing went digital, and I, for one, believe that they had started using artificial intelligence. Isn't it? the show cause notices and in the orders. So the okay. No, I got a case, I'll tell you this now. So the artificial intelligence saw that the manner in which it was being drafted was getting very templatized. The show cause notices were being templatized. So as a judge, when I used to open a file, I knew when I opened a show cause notice what para I have to read, which page I have to read. So I knew it. I would just open it and I would see, okay, this is where it is, this is where it is, and then the order was there. So technology was utilized by the department and in a big way, and we could make out that. And in 122(1)(a), there was a major change, and that was any person being added. Earlier only it was the taxpayer. So this has now put a very important liability on practitioners as well. So all of you need to be very, very careful. In one or two cases, I remember the writ petitions came, the affidavits were forged, GST consultants, chartered accountants were engaging lawyers, there was no verification of the actual client, writ petition was filed. It led to lodging of an FIR in one or two cases under the orders of the court. So all of you need to be very careful in the GST regime that any person could be liable, and therefore accountants, consultants who give advice have to take care that they do not expose themselves to wrong practices, malpractices and things like that. Now, the biggest problem that we are finding is the non-existence of the tribunal. The High Court was flooded and flooded and flooded with writ petitions. The supplementary list would have 30 to 40 matters every day. And you could imagine, in 30 to 40 matters, every day about 20, 25, 30 matters were getting disposed of. So, as judges, in one GST bench, we had to read 30, 40 fresh matters every day and also finalize 25 to 30 orders every day. So, if we missed even one day, the orders would become 50 and then it would become 100 within 2 days. So, it was impossible. I remember in the GST roster, there was no way I would sleep before midnight, and I would be up by 6 every morning. My LRs would be working day in and day out to churn out these orders. Because every order, you may just argue and go away. But the point is to make sure that the financial year is correct, the amount is correct, and everything has to be verified, because otherwise then there's a review or a clarification application. Churning out 50 orders in 2 days, 100 orders in 3 days was humongous. It was a huge amount of work. GST is a very, very tough roster to handle, and that was very, very evident when we were holding that bench. So the other issue in many, many matters which we came across was the the blocking of the ITC. It was going beyond 1 year. So that we clarified, I think, at that time, and 122(1)(a), of course, I just read that for you. Now, when the courts refuse to, do entertain petitions, one of them is this. If you just see this slide, you will see that if the ITC, for example, in that case was 7 crores, but the overall GST implication is 155 crores. Standard pattern 172 crores. Fraudulent ITC, whenever we saw that the amounts were too high and there was a maze of firms which were involved, factually writ petitions cannot be, entertained at that stage. Now let's move to the next issue. The anti-profiteering issue under the GST regime. As you all know, there was the National Anti-Profiteering Authority, then that was, shut down, and then it went to the CCI. Now it is the GStat. I think the GStat has now started functioning. I came to know as of Friday that GStat is now functioning, and there are 31 benches. So now the question is whether all of these matters which are going to go into the anti-profiteering regime, of course there is a deadline of 1st April 2025, everything has to be before that only, not after that. So I guess the GStat is going to deal with these matters now. Now coming to the startup play case, you would remember that there was a huge amount which was involved in this, 450 crores. But on merits in this case we examined this matter. To the extent that it had to be sent to the tribunal, we did send it, but for one particular year we realized that the analysis was not sufficient. Anti-profiteering, as you all know, means that somebody has not passed it on to the consumer. The benefit of GST reduction has not been passed on. And in that case, we felt that it was not so clear that it has not been passed on. And in any case, the tribunal or the authority has to take into consideration the transition. Whenever a new GST percentage is fixed, there may be products which will be in the market, on the shelves. How can they be withdrawn? That transition had to be given. So in this case, I remember we had to, in one of the notices, we had to set it aside and remand it to the authority. Now, what is happening in the future? Like in one of the IPR cases, somebody cited, it's a very well-known brand called Christian Louboutin. They make red sole shoes. Okay, they have spikes in it. So the lawyer, in order to establish the reputation of that brand, cited an answer from ChatGPT to say that Christian Louboutin is the most well-known. So our law researchers, so we are now all of us are very well equipped, all judges. So we have a full team of law researchers. Whatever the lawyers do, we try and check if everything is okay or not. So we put different queries in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gave different answers. So we then said, no, nothing to it. We can't rely on ChatGPT for reputation. So that what happened in the IP regime. Now see what happened in this case in the GST regime. J.M. Jain versus Jeetmal Choraria. This time, the GST department, they cited 4 cases, out of which 3 were non-existent. They were hallucinated artificial intelligence orders. So we set it aside. The court set it aside and said one has to be very careful. And those citations and names we physically checked from the books. In fact, I told the court master, in this case, don't even go by SEC or Manu Patra. Send for the EIR, send for the SEC, and we checked that those cases didn't exist. So this was the GST department which had cited it. So we then said nothing doing, it can't go on like this. You cannot cite. So AI has a problem. It has hallucination problem, it has black box problems. So as a court system, we should use AI. I believe we should use. Departments should also use AI, but there has to be a second level of verification. Without that, it is not possible. And recently, there was a trial court judge who has used AI in his judgment, and by reading the English, we were able to make out that this can't be by a trial court judge. This very dangerous trend. So, if you ask AI to draft judgments, then they are in a big problem. So, in the same way, GST department or even the GST appellate tribunal should be careful of not using AI for drafting. They can use AI for research, AI for, summarizing the show cause notice. You can feed the PDF and summarize it. But there is a huge privacy and confidentiality issue as well in AI. So, the government should look at maybe having a separate AI algorithm which can be only used by the GST department while maintaining confidentiality. So recently on my visit to London, I realized the Master of Rolls, Jeffrey was in fact told me that in London, in England, they do now have a separate AI which is being drafted and which is being created on the basis of a large language model, but only exclusively for the judiciary itself. So the documents reside in servers within the judicial system. They do not allow it to be used on the general LLM's database. So that is something that the government should really look at for the judiciary in general and for the GST department in particular, because you will need to create a separate algorithm based on the LLM which could already be there. In fact, you should engage somebody to do it specifically for the GST department, give that to be used across the tribunals and the department. Otherwise, we will have a problem. Now, let us see the GST 80 numbers. 70,000 appeals have been filed as of yesterday. 70,113 appeals. There are 72,000 registered users. 14,000 advocates are registered. So there's one principal bench and 31 state benches. So the e-filing portal has been launched. I think you will know all these dates. I mean, for me it was news because I was just researching for this presentation today. But as of yesterday, that was the last day for filing of the appeals. We don't know if there's any further extension. But what is the point that I wish to make here? So, I'm going to draw on my experience from IP. We in 2004 or 5, or 1999, under the Trademarks Act, but then it came into effect maybe 2-3 years later. The Intellectual Property Appellate Board was created in Chennai with 3 benches across the country. And over the years, we realized that the board wasn't functioning the manner in which it needs to function. Firstly, the head office was in Chennai, so no High Court judge was willing to go there. For some strange reason, people who knew IP, they would keep saying no. The registry was not fully equipped, and that led to the Tribunal Reforms Act in 2021, and the IPAB was abolished almost 20 years later. And all the cases from the IPAB came back to the High Courts. It was then that the IP division of the Delhi High Court was set up. And you'll see that almost 2,000 cases came to the IPAB, and 60%, almost everything has been disposed of by now except the trademark, some of the trademark appeals. Within 2-3 years, we were able to dispose it off. Now the lesson that we learned in the IPAB is this, and since I was handling, I was working closely as a practitioner at that time, what went wrong with the IPAB should not go wrong with the GST Appellate Tribunal. Otherwise, we have a very big elephant in our hand. It will not be possible to handle it. Number 1, give sufficient autonomy to the tribunal. Do not control it through the ministry. It needs to have financial autonomy. For every computer that you buy in the tribunal, you should not seek approval from the ministry. The minute you do that, the members, the presiding officers, they are going to be totally frustrated. This is what happened in the IPAB. And we've lived that experience, and I can tell you this with a pinch of salt, that if you don't want this to happen to the GST, you need to equip it. Maybe you can create a budget. Give the budget, give the permission to the chairman or the member with 2 signatories to be able to equip the GST sufficiently. Because IPAB did not have autonomy. They were not even able to get their own contractual staff. Forget even regular appointments. Appointments were not happening for years together. There was a crunch of staff. There was no budget. The chairperson, I remember Justice Prabhashi Devan was the chairperson for a good 3-4 years. And Justice Manmohan Singh, they were so frustrated in the IPAB. Let us not do that with the GST because GST is going to be the lifeline for the GST regime, which is again the lifeline for the economy. So we need to be very clear about how much independence, how much autonomy we give to GST. Let us make it function efficiently, and please don't make bureaucrats in the ministry control the GST. The minute you do that, it loses its independence, it loses its transparency, it becomes opaque, it becomes another department of the ministry. Then there will be enormous frustration. Writ petitions will again then flood the High Court. So if you want GST to work efficiently, the intention should be to make it a vibrant and a very good tribunal which will show the way to other tribunals in the country. That is what I would like to say. The less 226 petitions we face in the High Court, the better. I really thank each of you and everyone for calling me here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an insightful, overbroad, comprehensive evolution of central goods and service tax regime. 16 key points for sustaining and maintaining the independence of tribunal was also highlighted. The manner in which you have juxtaposed the difficulties faced in true legislation is something for everyone to look at. Otherwise, the core function of judicial review, which is inbuilt in any function of a tribunal, would get lost. I now request Sri N. Venkatraman sir, then the Additional Solicitor General of India, to enlighten us with his thoughts.
Honorable Justice Pratibha Singh, Sagarwal, Anurag, dear friends, it was a very practical and most informative session by Honorable Justice Pratibha Singh. You should also a big hand for that. Very, very information packed. There are a lot of takeaways which we should bear in mind. So just develop on that. 6-7 minutes, maximum 10 minutes, and then we mind. One, on a bunch of showcase notices, consolidated or single, the issue is only because of this. It all arose because of this. If you see the central enactment of excise and the service tax, they have always issued, there is no assessment like income tax. So it is always period-based showcase notices. So 5 years, 1 year, 1.5 years, all this was period-based. So central officers had the tendency only to issue a consolidated showcase. But under the VAT regime, it's exactly the opposite. Some states had monthly returns as a showcase period. Some states had a yearly return as a showcase period. And therefore, they started to issue individual showcase notices. So now, we are in a cooperative, supportive, federalistic approach. So you can't say one is right, one is wrong now. So of course, courts have taken consolidated. There are some sets of courts which have taken a view that consolidated showcase notice is not bad, as Honorable Justice was saying. Some courts have taken a different view. So now, how do we resolve the impasse? So this is something which we can see at this moment. Now we have decided to go back to the GST Council and obtain a clarificatory amendment to ensure that both are right, at least for the past. And we should move forward in a very sensible way for the future. We can't say, see, it is now becoming very increasingly difficult for any nation to handle. To say that a tax department has no right to issue a showcase. It's going to that. See, this is some a few thousands or few lakh. If you take income tax and job form, from 2021 we are not able to make any assessments. 3 times we have come to the Supreme Court, all the time the revenue is succeeding, but still we are not able to collect it. So this time, because Income Tax Act has to be now repealed, we decided to bring in an amendment to say that it was always job, and that is now being challenged again. And you can imagine some 4.5 lakh showcase notices involving some 20-25 lakh crore income not even being assessed. So can a country bear this? Is something which we have to bear in mind. So consolidated showcase one, the very right and a justified point from taken it in this forum. This is a solution we have recommended to the government, and the governments are looking at that. This is one piece of information which we can take. 2, I'm happy that the GST tribunal on its last date has registered only 72,000 cases, because we thought 6 lakh showcase notices have been issued across the country. So, which means some high courts have disposed of 5.5 lakh showcase notice in favor of the revenue or assessee, and it's come to a close. We don't know this week, I guess. That's because we were worried about migration of 6 lakh cases into the GST tribunal. That was the initial concern. But here again, 6 lakhs means what? How much of consolidated showcase notice, how much of multiple showcase notice of the same issue will be one issue, one aspect. So it can easily downsize. Possibly, we don't know how the mechanism is. If all showcase notices have come out to a common order, and that common order has been challenged and is part of the 72,000, then possibly they have decided a few lakh cases also. We'll have to wait and see how it spans out. But even 72 is a large number. But you can give one assurance to the Honorable Judge and to the trade and to all of you. Everybody is working hard to find out how this can be resolved at the earliest, because the tribunal has come a little late. So one way is to bunch. they can also suggest if there are ways to liquidate it. We should liquidate it as quickly as possible. Identical issues need not be replicated. This is one, because it is a central law, it's a state law, but it's a mirror law. So an interpretation, an authentic interpretation, rather one forum should be good enough to take it to the High Court, whoever wins or loses, to resolve, rather than 31 reflections, 31 High Courts, 31 then coming back to Supreme Court. It's a never-ending issue. So a lot of support is needed from the advocates and consultants to resolve this, where we can bunch and request dedicated special benches to decide matters, not necessarily one tribunal sitting in Delhi alone. So these are all plans which is being worked and decided. Something will come, and we will be as trade-friendly as is possible. Is one assurance we will give you in technology. 3. You should all understand how this GST network actually has calibrated itself over a period of time. I mean, that is Rishi is absolutely right. The first 3-4 years we had big gateway issues, no doubt about it. That is why we stood up finally 5-6 years of litigation with some 18,000 notices, 18,000 writ petitions across India. We came to the court before the Honorable Supreme Court, headed by Justice Abdul Nazir and Justice J.K. Maheshwari, as they were then as the bench. We gave a stipulation. We opened the window for 3 months. These types of errors, we came and admitted. It solved 18,000 cases overnight. Simple. So we gave a protocol, we circulated it to the other side agreed. So it was a consent order passed by the court. So 5 years of litigation came to an end. So it's not that we want to be very, very conciliatory as far as possible. Where there is no issue to litigate, we should not waste our time. So this is one improvement, after which from 2019-20, all the teething period issues are all completely over. You will be happy to know, what is the advantage of technology. In 2017, you had only 66 lakhs SSCs registered. Today, you have about 1.7 crore SSCs registered. So 145% increase. And the revenues from 84,000 crores monthly collection has gone up now. April 2026 has hit the high of 2.43 lakh crores. It's all now needed. These are all monies which are extremely needed now for a growing economy, for an economy which is aspiring to compete as a power player in the global space. So 2.43 lakh crores was the highest so far collected in April 2026, and we are averaging anywhere between 1.7, 1.8 to 2.2, easily month on month. So you must remember that before, this is the statistics which are filed in the Supreme Court, matter is going on, but I will just give you the number, not the issue. Till 2025, for 8 years, 2,647 lakh crore invoices have been uploaded in the network, of which less than 10 lakh crore invoices went for correction, which is 0.39%. So you should have a fair idea how this system works. Because all of us think electricity will not pay, income tax returns are paid, so every network is no. Both UPI and gateway are two systems which we can showcase it to the global scale. We are. In fact, our UPI system is being purchased, being contracted by various nations as a model. The largest gateways we are handling without a crash. So the population every month is about 1.8 crore returns. And quarterly returns, it exceeds 2 crore returns. And the invoices, if you want to know the invoices, monthly populates e-invoices 20 lakh. And transport returns 9 lakh. So this is the kind of numbers which a gateway handles, assimilating data from various places and doing an invoice matching and then trying to issue that. So understand it's very comprehensive, and 1,000 people are working in this, 900 and odd people. We have put everything in the affidavit to the court. So this is the strength in which this gateway, and one good feature, you should all complement the system to work. Sometimes you need that also. In 8 to 8.5 years, not a single show cause notice, not a single complaint that the system is compromised by people who handle it. Not single. On the contrary, you find fake invoices, you find mismanagements, you find articulations happening outside the system. So this is something we should, so going digital, see, GST works on 2-3 important platforms: transparency, transformation, and technology, without which we could not have assimilated this many assessees under one roof. So these are issues which are important, relevant for all of us in terms of technology. On the interstate issues, just 2-3 minutes and then we will. Interstate is a very, very important constitutional issue which has been so neatly resolved by the union and states, which should complement them for this federal success. If you see the Constitution, Article 301 to 304 talks about interstate trade to be completely free. No state can take any advantage. But the same article has 3 exceptions, 302 to 304. It says when Parliament can step in. When Parliament can step in even to discriminate in a contingency. And when states can come forward, not to discriminate, but to be compensatory, taking the assent of the President. So this is the constitutional framework in which interstate trade has to happen. So we had the Central Sales Tax Act. So question arose when the GST Council went, CGST, SGST, New GST was not an issue. Because both had 50% revenue, both gave up and took something else. But it's a success to the states. They agreed Parliament should handle IGST. That's a very, very important call to build a strength. The backbone for the GST regime is this healthy federal compromise, allowing Parliament to do the IGST, sharing same 50% against the respective revenues. See, it's a big change. If you see the old law, central sales tax, the revenue went only to the states, and it went to the originating states. From there, you move to the Parliament, asking Parliament to do it, and then distribute it equally amongst the constitutional amendment, which is now working successfully. 2 areas are showing some concern, which we are trying to iron out invariably through GST Council. One is the place of supply. Place of supply sometimes has some, for example, Bombay High Court decided on the intermediaries. Then we ourselves moved to the GST Council and ensured that export intermediaries should not be taxed. We came with the law so that this problem gets over at some point of time. So this is one way. See, any invitation or any foreign currency inflow will always be quite sensible and ready to give concessions. But in the garb of an inflow, you should go for an inflow. This is one area where we are having our own how to be more dynamic and more focused. So interstate trade is as such, except for place of supply rules, it's working very well because both state and union has equal share, even though Parliament collects it. So this is the big picture on both technology and on the other space of interstate trade. Any questions? A couple of times you can take it. Otherwise, it's very thankful to Anurag and thankful to CSR. We could sit along the side of one of the renowned, very revered and respected judge of the Delhi High Court, and giving out clear, absolute clarity which she spoke. She will do it in court and she will express it to her judgment. Clear and straight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In fact, there must be some jigyasa from the audience. So that flow we will soon open. But the one thing I would like to just say as a form of an observatory increment. There is a story of political statesman. The trust was bestowed on union government or on then finance minister. That was not an era of that federal structure or federal hegemony of a particular political party in power. At that point of time, the states were represented by different political regime. So behind every legislation, there is a political statesmanship. Perhaps the kind of legislation, the model legislation which we have in this country with such a diversity, it might not have taken place if the person at the helm would not have been like the one we had. With that, I will open the floor for everyone to raise questions, whosoever has.
My question is to Mr. Venkatraman ASG. Sir, obviously cannot question the judge. Could I pick up?
But I can decline to answer. Repeat question.
Sir, one of the, so as a practitioner, GST in the High Court, because of the number of writ petitions that are being filed, that is there because the alternative remedy of going to the appeal and subsequently to the GST appellate tribunal is the question of pre-deposit. Today, in the earlier simple excise regime, it was 10%. The High Court has also slowly started declining writ petitions that even if it is an issue of pre-deposit, it would go to the appellate tribunal. So, do you think 20% of the disputed tax amount is justified, particularly in a scenario where some of the demands actually raised are bordering on being absurd? That is, and Supreme Court has also in Madia Chemicals and other judgments have said that if the pre-deposit is too much, then renders the appellate remedy illusory. So we'd like to take your opinion on the issue of pre-deposit being at 20%, whether it is justified for the trade.
So it is, it's a policy call, you should understand. Opinion is not going to change the framework of law. See, 10 or 20, it's like this. You do agree that borderline cases are there in every aspect of it. But now, what do you say of good cases enjoying the immunity mechanism? That's also unfair. Suppose it's a strong case and the demand of a substantial amount is conferred. The assessee enjoys an immunity of 80%. So when you have to deal with a system, you have to see systemic issues also, unfortunately. See, if you start giving exceptions, say undue hardship is one, or where it is a primary case, then you know Systat collapsed only because it was early pre-deposit from morning to evening. It never disposed of appeals. Because you will be doing the full-fledged hearing. So just to stop that, this arrangement has been made. But one thing I can assure you, system is extremely conscious. This system, I've been working with 6 years, every minute we spend our time, valuable time, to the best of our ability. If big issues crop up in the next 1 or 2 years, then system will be sensitized and it will regulate itself. If suppose 60% of the demands are considered to be actually unsustainable, then system will be. You have to give that meaning. That's one solace, right? We are trying to be as dynamic as possible with law. You can take it assurance. We're not making open argument, just a statement from the lips. Any sensitive issue draws attention and times to the issue.
So my question was actually related to pre-deposit only, but there is a layer to it. So what is happening is that since the inception of GST, mere uploading of show cause notices and orders on the portal has become sufficient service by Madras High Court. In fact, Singh has also seen it lightly because being considerate that taxpayers may not be able to see the portal all the time. Is that as far as the first appellate authority is concerned, the first appellate authority treats uploading on portal as the date of service, and therefore any appeal filed after 3 + 1 month is automatically rejected by the system. Now what happens is that the SSE has already deposited 10%. His first appeal has been dismissed even without any hearing because the system dismisses. And the second appeal requires him to deposit another 10%. And in fact, in our practical experience, we have seen that a lot of SSEs are not filing GST at have that 10%. Or they believe that that 10% will make them lose business or become bankrupt. So my personal experience is that out of hundreds and thousands of show cause notices which we saw, most of them have not gone into GST because those orders were discovered 3 months, 4 months down the line. The first appeals after depositing 10% of the
What do you mean? See, when they upload it in their system, they say not unless communicated is not an order. When it gets uploaded, it also you will have a site for it.
That's correct.
So how can you deny knowledge?
Section 169 obviously provides or uploading on the portal is
So,
sufficient.
on this, if I can intervene, I think what has happened, just to inform Mr. Venkataman, is most of the traders who have GST numbers are not so tech savvy. So they don't even know what is their GST number and even password to access the portal. Because it's the chartered accountants or the lawyers or the consultants who have the passwords. So until and unless the GST consultant comes and tells them that there's a show cause uploaded or an order uploaded, they don't even know about it. So that's why I remember in a few cases, we've said that it is not sufficient to merely upload. You must email it or send it on the mobile number of the taxpayer. Now this is where I think some sensitization is required because, and I'm not sure if I should, caution practitioners. All of you, and when I mean you, I don't mean lawyers generally, whether it's chartered accountants, GST consultants, or GST practitioners, in whatever way, what they do is they just add the mobile number of the practitioner as the contact number, the email address of the practitioner as the contact email address, and the password is with the practitioner. The litigant is actually not even near the system. So at least there should be one communication to the tax payee, because the practitioner may have 100 clients. He's not concerned with a small Karolak trader who's got a small order of maybe 20 lakhs. He will be servicing the bigger people. But if the client himself knows that some notice has come, I have to go to the lawyer, speak to him, go and file the appeal. I think what happens in our court right now sometimes is all are given mobile numbers and the intimations of listing of cases is sent to the litigant. So if the tax payee can get the notice of the SCN or the order, it will make a big difference and he's not totally dependent on the lawyer or the practitioner or the consultant. So I think in some way you have to resolve this. This is very important and you raised a very valid point.
Thank you. My request to sir would be that up to 31st March 2026, at least there should be some amnesty where anyone who, for whatever reason, could not file appeal before Commissioner Appeal because it has become time barred. There should be some form of facility that should be given to them, maybe 20 days, 30 days, 90 days. For Commissioner Appeal. It was already existent. So I tell you, so the layers in it, the layers.
False promises,
Yes.
right? But I mean, see, understand anything to do with GST flexibility is something which we should agree, and we have been doing. See, they said we couldn't upload extra. You said, see, even though it was opened in November, till May, you see, I will give you the reverse statistics. They should also know this. Till May, hardly anything. Yes. No, what happened? From 8 months, they all slept. Because we have time till June. You pump in June and it triggers back and you come for an extension. This is not that we should work with you. But see, suppose you've done it in January or February, the problem would have been resolved in June itself. We needed a one for this. So everybody takes chances, no problem. But we will see what, see, time bar, and tell you reverse also. See, you may see 6 lakhs crore show cause notice, and if it's going to be multiple show cause, where it ends, I don't know. But 80%, 70% of the issues is making so you will not find the trader, he will not have the money. You will not be there.
Those are a different category altogether.
No, it is the major. So people who
chauffeur.
My lord said call the directors also to the court and recorded the statement also.
And we realized that he was a chauffeur of the.
Yes.
So any transactions of this nature, see, GST is very, very mild. Cross-border transactions, MLA transactions, how does it happen? How do firms get incorporated across the world? All these models are done and dusted models, but it's still working because of time. In India, if it happens domestic, you're able to catch it. If it goes cross-border, impossible. It becomes difficult. So these are all the issues also from our end. We are also having some this time because we will face failure. We also studied fairly well this GST map, and therefore we are able to respond to many of your queries. Major issues of this. But
Going forward, Mr. Venkataraman, the suggestion that you could add a taxpayer's mobile number as additional.
Right now, what was happening, and in fact, right now, what is happening is it's only an intimation is coming that something has been uploaded. What has been my mail or my phone number? It's just that something has been uploaded. I'm just trying. They actually came to know when some recovery proceeding starts. Then and say this notice has been received today. And ma'am,
one of the things, my name is Sameer Mittal, and one of the things I wanted to speak. One of the things I wanted to speak about is multinationals operating in India and the people sitting as foreign directors. And they have said like you need to have a PAN, and I'm not a GST petition. I don't like you cannot become a GST signatory. So what are the things that even mobile numbers happened, and the person sitting abroad doesn't have an idea that what is happening on the books. And I'm talking about not talking about the Indian client, I'm talking about a multinational facing millions and millions of litigation because he has because when people think that we are litigating countries as compared to a solution oriented country.
see, you can color anything in whatever way you like. One thing I'll tell you, sir, we are now participating in litigation across the world. Okay? Across the world, and I can give you with sense of responsibility. You are not as bad or as low or as delayed as all of us presume. Litigation is a very delayed process across countries. Nowhere litigation, you file a petition, it comes for hearing the next day. In many nations, it doesn't happen. Your till service of notice is complete. For months, your first hearing doesn't happen. Most of the High Court, at least in 2 days, it comes. At least in some High Court form. So, one thing, but directors, see, I can understand his client, not your client. Their ignorance is no good excuse. If he is a director, he will also know what is happening in his company. Thank you so much.
We are on the closer of the session. So I just want to add one thing. On artificial intelligence, while that matter which is being reflected upon the map, that was going on, there was a lighter side to that, and that you all are entitled to that hilarious event. I was the counsel arguing that case. So I said the artificial intelligence should not make them so mad that they forget about human intelligence. So human intelligence shall always be there, and on that aspect that there is a message received, so notice should also be given. That's practically impossible. It will have its own repercussion. Once an information is provided, those information should be sufficient to alert a man that something is going on, and he can look up to his portal. Even in income tax, the same process is applied. So those instances where chartered accountant is operating my income tax ID, those are very less on that side. So that can be minimized on this side also. So we have analogical things put in place in other tax jurisdiction. So same can be replicated here as well. With that, we are on the closure of this session. I would request Mr. Agrawal to.
Thank you, Arnab ji. बहुत अच्छा आपने मोटिवेट किया. Thank you very much. Now I request Aanchal Mahani ji and Dr. Rajita Agrawal, she is speech law expert. Please come to the rise and present the memento to Honorable Madam Justice Talpa MC. Please. Please. तो करो अपना बता आप दोनों मिलके चला and Mr. Kapoor देवेंद्र क्या नाम है नितिन कपूर साहब वो आए और हमारे ये साहब के I didn't. इधर से और बहुत अच्छा मन संचालन किया है इन्होंने. नो डाउट अल्लाह गुलाजी का भी हम बहुत आभार व्यक्त करते हैं और चलिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका. और मैं चाहूँगा इस सेशन के लिए हाँ थैंक यू.
You know, when I sat on the tax bench, I always wondered why I did not practice taxing as a lawyer.
एक ग्रुप थैंक यू वेरी मच. और नेक्स्ट सेशन के लिए मैं इनवाइट कर रहा हूँ मिस्टर सिन्हा जी को एडवोकेट रिपोर्ट गाइड. थैंक यू. एक ग्रुप देवेंद्र जी आगे मंच वाली ग्रुप
Thank you. Thank you.
और इसको उसमें भी किया है ये आए थे.